I was driving my Porsche through the rural side when it broke down in the last place I ever wanted to see again. Riverbend Grove, the small town I abandoned 11 years ago when my family got rich. The only mechanic shop open was Brooks Auto Repair. When Tyler Brooks walked out, my childhood best friend, the boy I'd promised would always matter before I blocked his number and disappeared, my heart stopped. His first words were ice cold. Isabelle Monroe. It's been a while. I'd spent 11 years running from the guilt of what I'd done to him. Now, standing in his garage, there was nowhere left to run. Before we dive in, I'm curious, what's the name of your oldest friend? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if you love stories about broken promises, the cost of shame, and whether some friendships can ever be repaired, please subscribe so you don't miss our next one. Now let me take you back to the day I faced the person I'd hurt most in the world. The first sign of trouble was the check engine light, blinking ominously on the dashboard of my Porsche 911 as I drove through the winding roads of the rural side. The second sign was the sudden loss of power as the engine began misfiring, forcing me to pull onto the shoulder of Highway 22. I sat there for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel, looking at the road sign ahead. Riverbend Grove, 2 miles. Of all the places for my car to break down, it had to be here. The town I grew up in, the town I'd fled from 11 years ago and never looked back. The town where I'd left behind everything and everyone from my old life, including the person who'd mattered most. My phone showed 1 bar of service. I called AAA, and the dispatcher told me the nearest tow would take 2 hours, but there was a mechanic shop in Riverbend Grove, Brooks Auto Repair, that was open on Sundays and could see me immediately if I could get the car there. Brooks. The name hit me like a physical blow. I knew that shop. I'd spent half my childhood there, sitting in the office doing homework while Tyler's dad worked on cars, while Tyler and I planned our futures and promised each other we'd always be best friends. But that was before my father's small roadside motel became a chain, before a business partner helped him expand into a hospitality empire, before we moved to Portland and I became Isabelle Monroe, hotel heiress instead of Izzy, the girl whose family ran the modest Riverbend Grove Inn. I managed to coax the Porsche the 2 miles into town, the engine sputtering and protesting. Riverbend Grove looked exactly as I remembered. A main street with a diner, a post office, a general store, and not much else. Population 3,200, the sign said. It had been 3,100 when I left. Brooks Auto Repair was at the end of Main Street, a modest garage with 2 bays and a small office. The building looked the same, though it had been repainted, a cheerful blue instead of the faded white I remembered. I pulled into the parking lot, my $200,000 Porsche looking obscenely out of place, and sat there for a moment trying to calm my racing heart. There was a chance Tyler didn't even work here anymore. Maybe he'd moved away, gone to college, built a life somewhere else. Maybe I'd get lucky and some stranger would fix my car and I could leave without confronting the past I'd been running from for over a decade. But I'd never been that lucky. The office door opened and a man walked out, wiping his hands on a rag. He was tall, probably over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and the kind of lean, muscular build that came from physical work. He wore jeans and a gray t-shirt with Brooks Auto printed on it, and his dark hair was slightly too long, falling into eyes that I would have recognized anywhere. Tyler Brooks, 27 years old now, not the 16-year-old boy I'd abandoned, but unmistakably the same person. He stopped when he saw me, his expression shifting from professional friendliness to something cold and unreadable. "Isabelle Monroe," he said, his voice flat. "It's been a while." I got out of the car, my legs unsteady. "Hi, Tyler." "Car trouble?" He didn't move closer, didn't offer a handshake or any acknowledgement beyond the bare minimum of courtesy. "The engine started misfiring. Check engine light came on. I barely made it here. Pop the hood. He walked over to the Porsche without looking at me, leaned under the hood, and spent several minutes examining the engine with the focused professionalism of someone who'd been doing this for years. I stood there awkwardly, unsure what to do with my hands, painfully aware of how out of place I looked. Designer jeans, cashmere sweater, expensive jewelry. Everything about me screamed money, screamed the life I'd chosen over the life I'd had here. Tyler straightened up, closing the hood. You've got a faulty ignition coil, probably bad spark plugs too. I can fix it, but it'll take a few hours. I need to order the part, and with it being Sunday, the earliest I can get it is tomorrow morning. You'll need to stay overnight. Oh, okay. Is there a hotel? I stopped myself, the absurdity of the question hitting me. My family owned the hotel. The Riverbend Grove Inn, now part of the Monroe Hospitality Group's Heritage Collection. Rebranded, renovated, and barely recognizable as the modest motel my father had built from nothing. The inn's still there, Tyler said, his tone making it clear he knew exactly what I'd been about to ask. Though I'm sure it's changed a lot since you lived above it. The bar blended. We had lived above it. My family's small apartment above the motel office, cramped and modest and home. The apartment that no longer existed, converted into luxury guest suites when the property was renovated. Right. Thank you. How much will the repair cost? $450 for the part and labor. I can have it done by tomorrow afternoon. That's fine. Thank you. Tyler nodded, pulling out a work order form and beginning to fill it out. I'll need your contact information and a credit card on file. I provided both, and he processed everything with the efficiency of someone who'd done this thousands of times. Professional, distant, treating me like any other customer. When he handed me the receipt, our fingers brushed for just a second, and I saw something flash in his eyes. Pain, maybe, or anger, quickly suppressed. I'll call you when it's ready, he said, already turning back towards the garage. Tyler, wait. He stopped, but didn't turn around. How have you been? It's been so long, and I'm not here to catch up, Miss Monroe. Miss Monroe. Formal, distant, the name of a stranger. Not Izzy, not the nickname he'd called me our entire childhood. But he did turn, and his eyes were cold. I'm here to fix your car so you can get back to wherever you came from. That's all. I know I hurt you. You didn't hurt me. You made a choice. People make choices all the time. I just moved on. Your car will be ready tomorrow. The inn is 2 blocks east. He walked back into the garage, leaving me standing in the parking lot, feeling like I'd been slapped. I checked into the Riverbend Grove Inn, which was indeed barely recognizable as the place I'd grown up in. The renovation had transformed it from a modest roadside motel to a boutique hotel with high-end finishes and prices to match. The apartment where my family had lived was now the Monroe Suite, available for $400 a night. I didn't book that room. I couldn't bear it. Instead, I took a standard room and sat on the bed, staring at my phone, memories flooding back with overwhelming force. Tyler Brooks had been my best friend from the time we were 6 years old. We'd met on the first day of first grade. He was the shy kid, sitting alone at lunch, and I'd asked if I could sit with him. That simple moment had begun a friendship that lasted 10 years. We were inseparable. We did homework together, rode bikes together, spent summers swimming in the river and winters building snow forts. Tyler's dad owned the auto repair shop. My dad ran the small motel. Neither family had much money, but we had each other. Tyler was the one who knew all my secrets. He knew I was afraid of thunderstorms and would call me during them to distract me. He knew I wanted to be a writer and read every story I wrote, even the terrible ones. He knew that I worried about my parents' money struggles and felt guilty every time I asked for something we couldn't afford. And I knew everything about him. I knew he wanted to be an engineer, that he was brilliant with anything mechanical, that he spent hours taking apart and rebuilding engines just to understand how they worked. I knew he was self-conscious about his secondhand clothes and his dad's beat-up truck. I knew he had dreams of going to college and building something bigger than Riverbend Grove could offer. We were best friends. And more than that, we understood each other in a way no one else did. We came from the same world, shared the same struggles, dreamed the same dreams of something more. And then everything changed. I was 16 when my father's modest motel business caught the attention of a hospitality investor named Richard Harris. Harris saw potential in my father's property management skills and small-town charm. He offered a partnership. Harris would provide capital to expand, and my father would run operations. Within 6 months, Riverbend Grove Inn became 5 properties. Within a year, it was 15. By the time I was 17, Monroe Harris Hospitality owned 40 hotels across the Pacific Northwest, and my father was worth over $200 million. We moved to Portland, to a house in the West Hills with a view of the city, a far cry from our apartment above the motel. I was enrolled at Westridge Academy, an elite private school where my classmates were the children of tech executives, lawyers, and old money. I was terrified. These kids had summer homes in Bend and spring breaks in Cabo. They wore designer clothes and drove expensive cars. They spoke a language of privilege I didn't understand, referenced experiences I'd never had. And I was ashamed. Ashamed of where I came from, ashamed of the small town and the modest motel and the apartment above it, ashamed of the friend whose dad was a mechanic and who wore the same 3 shirts in rotation because his family couldn't afford more. The night before we moved, Tyler and I sat by the river, our spot, where we'd spent countless afternoons talking and dreaming. He was crying. I was crying. Nothing's gonna change, I'd promised him, holding his hand, meaning every word in that moment. You're my best friend, Tyler. You always will be. Money doesn't matter. We're forever. He'd believed me. We'd hugged goodbye, and I'd promised to call him every day, to visit every weekend, to stay exactly who we'd always been. I'd meant it. In that moment, sitting by the river with my best friend, I genuinely meant it. But the next day, I arrived at Westridge Academy. I met my new classmates, polished, sophisticated, casually wealthy in a way that made my family's new money seem garish and obvious. They asked where I was from, where I'd gone to school before, what my family did, and I lied. I said I'd gone to a private school in Virginia. I said my family had always been in hospitality. I carefully crafted a story that erased Riverbend Grove, erased the motel apartment, erased the girl who'd worn thrift store clothes and worried about electricity bills. That night, Tyler called 3 times. I didn't answer. I texted him that I was busy, that I'd call him back. I never did. Over the next week, he called and texted constantly. Worried at first, then confused, then hurt. My mother finally answered our home phone when he called there, and I heard her tell him, gently but firmly, that I was adjusting to my new life and that it would be best if he didn't contact me for a while. I let her say it. I hid in my room and let my mother tell my best friend that I didn't want to talk to him. And then I blocked his number. I deleted my social media accounts and created new ones under a slightly different name with privacy settings that made me unsearchable. I erased Isabelle from Riverbend Grove and became Isabelle Monroe from Portland. Girl of no past. Girl who'd always been wealthy. Girl who fit into this new world. Tyler tried for weeks to reach me. He sent emails. He sent messages through mutual friends from Riverbend Grove. Each one was like a knife in my chest. The confusion, the hurt, the desperate, did I do something wrong? And please just tell me what happened. I never responded. Eventually, he stopped trying. And I spent the next 11 years becoming the person I'd pretended to be. I went to Stanford, I got an MBA, I joined my father's company and worked my way up. Not just because of my name, but because I was good at it. I had relationships, friendships, a life that looked perfect from the outside. But I never forgot what I'd done. I never forgot the promise I'd broken. And I never forgave myself for being so weak, so ashamed, so desperate to fit in that I'd thrown away the most important friendship of my life. Now, sitting in a hotel room in Riverbend Grove, I realized I'd been running from this guilt for over a decade, and running had finally caught up with me. The next morning, I couldn't stay away. I walked to Brooks Auto Repair, telling myself I just wanted to check on the car's progress, knowing I was lying to myself. Tyler was in the garage, working on my Porsche. He didn't look up when I entered, though I knew he'd heard me. The bell over the door had chimed. "How's it looking?" I asked. "Part came in. Should be done by 2. His response was clipped, professional, eyes never leaving his work. "Tyler, please, can we talk?" "We are talking. I'm telling you about your car repair. That's what you're here for." "You know that's not what I mean." He finally looked up, and the cold anger in his eyes made me take a step back. "What do you want me to say, Isabelle? That it's okay? That I understand? I don't. You were my best friend, my person, the only one who really knew me. And you vanished. You promised me that last night by the river, you looked me in the eye and promised me that money wouldn't change anything, that we were forever." His voice was rising now, years of suppressed hurt coming to the surface. "You blocked my number. Your mom told me not to call anymore. You deleted every trace of your old life and pretended I never existed. Do you know what that did to me? I didn't just lose my best friend. I lost the person who knew everything about me, who I trusted more than anyone in the world. I spent months trying to figure out what I'd done wrong, replaying every conversation we ever had, wondering how I'd screwed up so badly that you couldn't even tell me goodbye properly." "Tyler, I'm not done." His hands were shaking. "Eventually, I realized I hadn't done anything wrong. You just decided I wasn't good enough for your new life. The mechanics kid from the small town didn't fit with the private school kids in the mansion in Portland. I was an embarrassment, a reminder of a life you wanted to forget." Tears were streaming down my face now. "That's not—" "Yes, it is. That's exactly what it was. And you know what? Fine. People change. People move on. I get it. But you didn't have to lie to me. You didn't have to make promises you had no intention of keeping. You could have just been honest. You could have said, 'Tyler, this is too hard. I need to start fresh.' I would have been hurt, but at least I would have understood. Instead, you let me believe we were still best friends, right up until the moment you erased me from your life." I was sobbing now, unable to speak. Everything he was saying was true. Tyler's anger seemed to deflate suddenly, replaced by exhaustion. "Why are you even here, Isabelle? Your car will be ready in a few hours and then you can go back to Portland and forget about this place again. That's what you're good at, forgetting." "I never forgot," I managed to say through tears. "Tyler, I never forgot, not for a single day." "Then why?" His voice broke. "Why did you do it? Help me understand, because I've spent 11 years trying to figure it out." I sank onto the bench in the waiting area, my legs unable to hold me up anymore. And for the first time in 11 years, I told someone the truth. I was terrified. When I got to Westridge, I was surrounded by kids who had everything their whole lives. They could tell I was different. They could smell the new money on me, and they were vicious about it, mocking the way I dressed, the way I talked, everything that marked me as not one of them. I wiped my eyes, though tears kept coming. I was drowning, trying to fit in, trying to become someone they'd accept, and every time you called, every time I saw your name on my phone, it reminded me of who I really was, the girl from the small town with the motel apartment, the girl who wasn't sophisticated or polished or born into wealth. You were the only person who knew the real me, and I was so ashamed of her. So you just erased her, Tyler said quietly. I erased her. I thought if I could just get through those first few weeks, I could figure out how to balance both worlds. But the longer I waited to call you back, the harder it became. And then your calls started sounding so hurt, so confused, and I couldn't face telling you the truth that I was choosing my new life over you, that I was too weak to be friends with someone who reminded me of where I came from. I was 16 and cowardly and so desperate to be accepted that I threw away the most important friendship of my life, and I've regretted it every single day since. Every relationship I've had has failed because no one really knows me. They all know Isabelle Monroe, hotel heiress, not Izzy who grew up above a motel. You were the last person who knew the real me, and I threw that away because I was ashamed. Tyler stood there for a long moment, processing. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer, but still guarded. I'm glad you feel guilty. You should. But guilt doesn't undo what you did, Isabelle. It doesn't give me back those months of wondering what I'd done wrong. It doesn't erase the fact that the person I trusted most in the world betrayed me. I know I can't undo it. But I need you to know that losing you, that was the biggest mistake of my life. Not because of what I lost, but because of what I did to you. You deserved so much better than what I gave you. Yeah, I did. He turned back to the car, back to his work, leaving me sitting there with my grief and guilt. I left the garage and walked through Riverbend Grove, seeing it with new eyes. The diner where Tyler and I used to split milkshakes, the park where we'd spent summer afternoons, the library where we'd studied together, the river where we'd made promises I'd broken. I walked to what used to be my family's motel and stood outside, looking up at what had been our apartment, now luxury suites with boutique furnishings and no trace of the family who'd lived there. I'd gained everything: money, status, a successful career, a life of privilege, but I'd lost the parts of myself that mattered, the girl who knew what it meant to struggle, the girl who valued people over possessions, the girl who had a best friend she loved more than her reputation. That afternoon, I went back to the garage. Tyler had my car ready, perfectly repaired. He handed me the keys and the final invoice, $450, exactly what he'd quoted. I handed him my credit card, then pulled out my checkbook. Tyler, I want to pay you more. Don't. His voice was sharp. Don't insult me by trying to throw money at this. I did my job. You pay what I quoted. That's all. I'm not trying to. Yes, you are. You think you can make this better with money. You can't. So just pay the bill and go. I paid the $450 and stood there for a moment, keys in hand, knowing this was probably the last time I'd ever see him. Tyler, can I ask you something? He sighed, but nodded. Did you end up okay after I left? He was quiet for a long moment. I was a mess for about a year. Almost didn't go to community college because we'd planned to go together, and doing it without you felt wrong. Eventually, I worked through it. Took over my dad's shop when he got sick 5 years ago. He's retired now, doing okay. I'm engaged to Emma. She's a teacher at the elementary school. Wedding's in 3 months. The news hit me harder than I expected. Not jealousy, but a profound sense of loss. Tyler had built a whole life, had found someone to share it with, had moved forward. I'd been frozen in guilt while he had been living. I'm happy for you, I said, and meant it. She's lucky. I'm the lucky one. She's patient with me, understands that I have trust issues. He gestured vaguely between us. She knows the story. About the best friend who disappeared. She helped me work through a lot of that hurt. Good. That's really good. I started to leave, then turned back. Tyler, I know this doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry for what I did to you. You deserved honesty and loyalty, and I gave you neither. I was a coward, and you paid the price for my cowardice. Tyler looked at me for a long moment, and something in his expression softened slightly. Not forgiveness exactly, but acknowledgement. I know you're sorry, Isabelle. I can see it. But sorry doesn't change the past. It just means we both have to live with what happened and try to move forward. I know. Thank you for fixing my car, and I hope you have a beautiful wedding. You deserve all the happiness in the world. I walked to my car, got in, and was about to drive away when Tyler appeared at my window. I rolled it down. Isabelle, for what it's worth, I forgive you. My breath caught. What? I forgive you. Not because what you did was okay, it wasn't, and not because I want to be friends again. Too much has changed. But I forgive you because holding on to anger for 11 years has been exhausting. Your apology, it doesn't undo anything, but it helps me understand that you were just a scared kid making terrible choices, not some monster who never cared. Tears were streaming down my face again. Thank you. That means more than you know. But Isabelle, forgiveness doesn't mean friendship. It just means I'm letting go of the hurt. We're not going to go back to being best friends. We're not going to stay in touch. This is closure, not reconciliation. I hope you understand that. I do. Tyler nodded and stepped back from the car. Drive safe. I drove away from Riverbend Grove with tears blurring my vision, having to pull over twice to collect myself. But they weren't just tears of grief. They were tears of release. For 11 years, I'd carried the weight of what I'd done to Tyler. The guilt, the shame, the knowledge that I'd betrayed the person who'd trusted me most. I'd let that guilt define me, shape my relationships, keep me from ever being fully vulnerable with anyone else. Tyler's forgiveness didn't erase what I'd done. It didn't repair the friendship we'd lost. But it gave me something I hadn't known I desperately needed. Permission to stop punishing myself. Permission to acknowledge my mistakes, learn from them, and try to be better going forward. I started being more honest with people. I told dates where I really came from. I talked about my childhood above the motel. I stopped being ashamed of Izzy from Riverbend Grove and started integrating her back into Isabelle Monroe. It was uncomfortable. Some people were confused by the dichotomy of wealth and working-class origins. Some people didn't understand why it mattered. But I persisted because I'd learned something from losing Tyler. Hiding who you are to fit in isn't worth the cost. The people who matter will love you for all of you. The messy history, the mistakes, the parts you're ashamed of. And the people who can't accept the real you aren't worth the effort of pretending. I never went back to Riverbend Grove. I thought about it sometimes, driving through, seeing if the river still looked the same, checking if the diner still made those milkshakes Tyler and I used to share. But it felt wrong, like I'd be intruding on a life that had moved on without me. Tyler Brooks got married, built his life, and became someone I used to know, and I made peace with that. Not easily, not quickly, but eventually. 3 months later, I received an email from Tyler. It had a wedding photo attached, Tyler and Emma, genuinely happy, and a brief note, "Found my forever friend. Hope you find yours someday. T." I cried for a whole hour, a cry of joy for him, forgiveness for me, and closure for both of us. I replied saying that they both looked happy and in love, that I was glad he had found her, and that I hoped they had a wonderful married life. A simple, maybe cliché, but honest message. I never heard from him again. Some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt. Some friendships once betrayed can't be restored. But what we can do, what I learned to do, is acknowledge the damage, apologize for our part in it, and try to be better people going forward. I broke a promise to my best friend. I can't undo that. But I can make sure I never break another promise like that again. I can be honest, even when it's hard. I can choose integrity over fitting in. I can be the person 16-year-old Izzy should have been. I think about Tyler sometimes. I wonder if he's happy, if his marriage is everything he hoped for, if he ever thinks about the girl who used to be his best friend. But I don't reach out. That's not my place anymore. But I hope, wherever he is, he knows that I finally understand what it means to keep a promise, even if I learned that lesson 11 years too late. What did you think of Isabelle's choice to abandon Tyler and his decision to forgive but not reconcile? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story about broken promises, the cost of shame, and learning from our worst mistakes touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe for more meaningful stories every day. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss our next thought-provoking tale. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.